This is the Ultrarunning History Podcast. I'm your host, Davey Crockett. Thanks. This is episode 76, the 23rd part of the 100-miler history. I will tell the story of the historic two-man 24-hour relay held in 1983, run by Neil Weygandt and Dan Brannen. In the 1970s, a 24-hour relay craze took place at high schools and colleges and running clubs. By 1972, Runner's World magazine was publishing results along with some standardized rules for these relays participated by hundreds of runners. The Washington and Baltimore Road Runners clubs were early adopters of the relay format when they established a 24-hour 10-man team relay race in 1970 on the track at Fort Meade in Maryland, where participants would run 1-mile legs. By the early 1980s, a few ultrarunners had tried to see how far they could go in 24 hours with just a two-man team. The known world record was 193 miles. During that time, the Philadelphia area was the home of many great road runners, with much credit going to Browning Ross, who organized numerous competitive races in the region for years. In 1983, two elite ultrarunners in America became inspired to give a try at breaking the world's two-man 24-hour record on that track at Fort Meade. These runners were Neil Weygandt and Dan Brannen. Neil Weygandt was from Haverton, Pennsylvania, and worked at a sports store. During his running career, he was best known for his 45 consecutive finishes of the Boston Marathon, including 24 consecutive finishes in less than 3 hours. But in ultra circles, during the 1980s and 90s, he was known for his achievements in fixed-time races, especially six-day races. Weygandt ran cross-country at Haverford High School and became their top runner and team captain. In 1962, at the age of 15, he met future ultra-running great Tom Osler, who was 22 at the time. Weygandt started to go on long training runs with Osler, beginning a lifelong friendship and mentorship. In 1966, Weygandt went to college and ran on the cross-country team at Pennsylvania military colleges, where he became a champion. He also ran on the South Jersey Track Club with Osler. Weygandt ran his first marathon in 1966 with a time of 2 hours 50 minutes and said, "It wasn't as hard as I thought it would be." Osler convinced Weygandt to run the Boston Marathon in 1967, starting his long association with a storied event. From 1968 to 1971, Weygandt was a member of various track clubs that would run races against other clubs. He and Osler competed together and frequently won in road races up to 17 miles long. In 1977, he began to run ultras, with the Metropolitan 50-miler in Central Park finishing in 6 hours 39 minutes. By 1980, Weygandt stepped up to the 100-kilometer distance and excelled running the Great Philadelphia to Atlantic City road race. 2 years later, he set a world indoor best, running 133 miles in 24 hours at the Haverford College Fieldhouse. That year, he also ran his lifetime best for 100 miles at Shea Stadium in New York, with a time of 14 hours 35 minutes. In 1983, he was living in Ardmore, Pennsylvania, and a member of the Haverford Athletic Association, along with Dan Brannen. Dan Brannen was from Upper Darby, a suburb of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm talking all about the city of brotherly love.
Dan Brannen would make a lifetime impact on the sport of ultra running. The Brannen family were Irish Catholics, and he went to Catholic schools growing up, including St. Joseph's Prep in Philadelphia, the same school that ultrarunning legend Ed Dodd attended several years earlier. In high school, Brannen was required to participate in an athletic extracurricular activity. He explained,
And I was a shrimpy little kid and played Little League baseball, but I wasn't particularly athletic. I wasn't particularly coordinated. So one of the sophomores who came in to give us help with the orientation said, if you can't do anything else, go out for cross country. So I went out for cross country my freshman year, and I was terrible at it. The cross country course was 1.6 miles and included a hill that you ran twice, and neither time could I get up that hill without walking.
During his senior year, a new coach, Larry Simmons, a successful distance runner and race walker, took over the team. He lit a fire into the team and into Brannen, whose courses times dramatically fell, resulting in his promotion finally to the varsity team. His rapid success turned him into a runner for life. Brannen went on to Bucknell University in central Pennsylvania and got in on the ground floor of a new cross-country team. His coach, Art Goulden, developed a highly successful running program at Bucknell. Brannen continued to improve under his tutelage.
Each year he was able to recruit faster and faster high school runners. Every year a new crop of freshmen would come in. They were state champions, and it was very competitive on the team. I was able to stay with the second tier of those guys. One of the best feelings I ever had about myself was, wow, here's 3 guys who were high school state champions, and we're in the middle of a race, and I'm running with them.
Brannen ran a few marathons during college, graduated in 1975, and joined the well-established road running scene in the Philadelphia and New Jersey area. He was a self-described running bum and lived with his parents for many years as he concentrated on his running passion. His weekly mileage would average about 100 to 120 miles per week, and his personal best marathon occurred at the 1979 Boston Marathon when he ran in 2 hours, 31 minutes, 13 seconds. He was intoxicated with distance running, and it evolved into a true career. Part-time, he would work editing research manuscripts, which enhanced his writing skills. He also coached cross-country at his former high school.
Good job, Matt. Good job. Open up that last mile. Good job.
Brannen was a member of the Haverford Athletic Club, and he became acquainted with future ultrarunning legends in the area by also racing in South New Jersey.
One of the prime organizers of races, both in South Jersey and the Philadelphia area, was a guy by the name of Browning Ross, who was a great Villanova runner, Olympian. He also was instrumental in the founding of the Road Runners Club of America. He started the Long Distance Log, which was the very first fledgling rudimentary running magazine. He was a real figurehead, great guy. At that time, he was living in South Jersey, coaching a high school team. And I would go over to South Jersey, and Ed Dodd and Tom Osler were in that South Jersey circle.
Brannen ventured into the short ultra-running races in 1978 by running the Knickerbocker 60-kilometer in Central Park and ran in a few others the next year. In 1980, he ran 50 miles for the first time at the JFK 50 in Maryland. To convince himself that he could do well, he ran 2 sub-3-hour marathons on back-to-back weekends leading up to the race.
Wow.
Brannen went to JFK thinking that he might have a good chance to win. His specialty was gnarly, rocky technical trails. He knew that he could stay with people who were faster than him on roads, and hoped to keep up with the previous year's champion, Bill Lauder of New Jersey.
I'm probably the only person ever to win the JFK in all of its history, starting in absolute dead last and going to first. When the gun went off, I was in the porta potty with my full sweats on and just rapidly completing my business and almost tripping over my sweats getting out of the porta potty and pulling my long pants off as I was trying to run at the same time, getting out to the start line and looking up the road, and I could barely see the final stragglers.
Where did everyone go?
I ran through most of the field for those first 3 road miles uphill. I think when I got on the trail, I just felt like, wow, this is great. I'm at home. I just mowed my way through the field. I got to probably within 3 or 4 miles left on the Appalachian Trail and caught Bill Lauder, ran with him for a little bit, chatted, and then pulled ahead of him. And by the time we got off the Appalachian Trail, I was in 3rd place.
Brannen continued on, running an ideal race. 2 others ahead of him soon dropped out, and he went into the lead at about mile 20. He was later passed by Lauder on the C&O towpath, but caught him on the final long road uphill toward the finish and won by 9 minutes. Brannen and Weygandt developed a strong friendship.
We were members of the Haverford Athletic Club together during the heyday of that club in the late 70s, early 80s, and we trained together a lot. Our regular club run was a Wednesday evening run through the hills of Gladwin, which is right next to Villanova. And they were very hilly road courses, and it was like last man standing. They were 15-mile hilly runs, and I remember finishing some of those runs and looking at the guys around me, and Neil was one of them, saying, geez, we should have been wearing a bib.
The 24-hour relay races fascinated Brannen. He had been aware for many years about the 24-hour relay, which during the 1970s was a popular event nationwide. He followed the progression of the records of the 10-person relay and was amazed at some of the distances achieved as they kept going further and further. He followed the news of a team in New Zealand that broke the world relay record.
And the way the New Zealand team broke it was they made a pact and they said anybody who ran a single mile over 5 minutes was out. And they started losing guys because somebody would fail to break 5 minutes. And I think they finished with only 5 or 6 guys. But that was the way that they maintained their speed. And I was just so impressed by that story. And then I came across that there was actually a 2-man. And I remember that the 2-man was 193 miles. And one of the members was a guy from, I believe, San Diego, who was an ultrarunner. His name was TJ Key. And I contacted him. He confirmed that they had done 193 miles.
Brannen floated the idea to Weygandt of running a 2-man relay to break the 193-mile record at the 1983 Fort Meade event.
And I said to him, I think we could get 200 miles. And if we do, we could get the world record and both get a 100-mile ultra finish. I remember that having some appeal to me and had equal appeal to him, so we entered.
They were well prepared, both in great shape, and brought an excellent crew, Brannen's sister Mary and his best friend Paul Caulfield. They were well stocked with plenty of clothing changes, beach chairs, towels, ice, beverages, and food. As usual, the August race was held during a heat wave with temperatures into the mid-90s with 90% relative humidity under a cloudless sky.
For the ultrarunners it was tough, but when you're doing the 24-hour relay, it's not that bad because most people were doing the 10-man and you get an hour between and all you got to do is run a fast mile and then you get a rest. And so that oppressive heat and humidity is not too bad for the relay runners for the full 10-person event. But it definitely was oppressive throughout most of the day. And even at night, there's steam coming up off the track.
They knew that they would each have 100 7-minute recovery breaks to offset the impact of the weather and planned to take full advantage of those breaks. Weygandt and Brannen began and passed a small wooden baton back and forth. They got into a groove early on and held their pace well. Surprisingly, the track did not seem to be congested to them, with the numerous relay teams and ultrarunners streaming and plodding through their miles.
There were a lot of teams. The entire perimeter of the track on the outside was like a high school track carnival, when you get all those teams together, all camped out in their little campsites. And pretty early on, word got around to all the teams of who we were and what we were trying to do. And people started cheering for us. I had people yelling my name constantly. That was very helpful. That was very encouraging.
They did run well, averaging about 6:45-mile-minute pace until about halfway shortly after midnight. They started to slow. It felt like a drag. The fun experience went away. When Brannen finished his mile, he tried to hand off the baton that had worn blisters into the palm of his left hand, but Weygandt threw his arms down and walked away, saying,
I can't do this anymore. I have to quit. I feel lousy.
Weygandt sat cradled in a lounge chair with a look of anguish on his face.
We thought it was over, but our handlers said, look, just both of you sit down. We had lounge chairs, and they got us to eat some more than we previously could eat because we could only take little snacks because our rest period was only 7 minutes. We were averaging 7-minute miles, and so each of us had only a 7-minute rest before that. We were actually off the track for just under 15 minutes. Then Neil just came back to life. He got his spirit back. He went back out there, and I think for the whole second half, he averaged a bit faster than I did. It took me 1 or 2 miles to get back into my groove. Once we recovered from that, we were on a mission. We weren't going to let that happen again. We were just going to plug away at it.
Ironically, that single block of non-running is what brought them home. Once they got going again, they were full on, totally on a mission with nothing to distract them. For the second half, the hardest times occurred during their resting sessions.
The 7 minutes off had little to no value at all. You can't eat, you can't sleep, and you can't really have an effective bodily function, if you know what I mean, in 7 minutes. It got to the point where sitting in the lounge chair for 7 minutes was actually a more miserable experience than being on the track moving. And it got to be a relief to get back on the track. It was always tough to get going for the first maybe 100 meters, but then your body just picked up where it left off with a rhythm, and it was smooth and it was peaceful. But then stopping and sitting in that lounge chair and trying to drink something and trying to eat little nibbles of things, and all you can do in 7 minutes effectively is worry.
For the last 6 hours, Brannen had a strange feeling in his legs, unlike anything that he'd ever felt in his entire running career, because of the on again and off again. He told his crew that his legs were singing. They were not in pain, but they were vibrating and seemed to be humming loudly. They pushed through the challenges and succeeded in breaking the known 2-man world record with 199 miles, 240 yards. Nick Marshall explained the finish.
Whenever one was running, the other was not, until they each had run 99 miles and did the 100th together. In essence, it was a day and night long interval workout of 100 miles each. They averaged 7 16-minute miles between them. Each spent about 12 hours not running.
To Brannen, it was one of the most memorable ultra-running experiences.
For a brief period, we really believed that we were world record holders, and that gave us a wonderful feeling. And that feeling has lasted throughout my life, even though we found out within a day after we did it that the same weekend, about 12 hours earlier, before us, 2 South Africans had run 2:01.
Prior to that historic relay, Brannen and Weygandt had been good friends and running buddies. They crewed each other at races. But the relay experience had a deep impact on them and bonded them together, which is surprising because they had 0 teammate interactions for the entire 24 hours except for the 15 minutes when the race was falling apart and the final couple laps. Otherwise, their interactions were just for fleeting seconds of 100 different handoffs. Weygandt went on to finish about 30 races of 100 miles or more, which was a significant number during that era. But Boston and his 45-year streak there remained the crown jewel of Weygandt's eyes. He said in later years,
I did not consider my streak a burden. I looked forward to returning to Boston each year. No other race had the same traditions. No other had the generation of spectators out cheering for us.
Brannen had fond memories of Weygandt.
Neil's a great guy, a really unassuming, salt-of-the-earth kind of guy. And Neil's the kind of guy that I can't imagine that anyone could ever find a reason to be upset with or angry at Neil. He's just a wonderful, down-to-earth, simple, friendly guy.
Brannen went on not only to be a talented ultrarunner, but a leading administrator in the sport. He co-founded the International Association of Ultrarunners, IAU, and served as its general secretary for 15 years. He helped establish international ultrarunning programs and worked to get ultra-distance accomplishments in the record books. Brannen is one of the very few that successfully made running his career. He did it by establishing a running race timing business, and for years timed races every weekend. He also became a course certifier and was the course manager for the 1988 U.S. Olympic Trials Marathon in New Jersey, along with other very prominent races. He became an expert at logistics and operations for road races, triathlons, and cycling races. In 2021, Brannen continues to run, and his passion is competing in adventure racing, including cycling, canoeing, and orienteering. Stay tuned for more 100-mile history. With that, this is Davy Crockett, and this is the Ultra Running History Podcast. I hope you run fast and far, enjoy life, get outdoors, and most of all, stay safe and don't take unnecessary chances.